Hello everyone, pleasant good evening to all of you. Welcome to this session on emerging trends and opportunities in pharmaceutical industry. Before we start with this session and before we get going, the main motto of this entire session is just one, that we spread awareness with regards to what are the upcoming opportunities in pharmaceutical industry so that we don't stay conventional and we find out different domains which might suit our area of interest as well. So going forward for our session, first and foremost, I would like to welcome our speaker for the day, Dr. Ajaz Hussain sir. First of all, a big thanks to Ajaz sir for being present, especially on a weekend, that too on Sunday, and that too on a topic which he would always like to spread awareness about. Today's session on emerging trends and opportunities in pharmaceutical industry by Dr. Ajaz Hussain sir. Basically, sir has experience with regards to different pharmaceutical companies. He has been presently on the current advisory association with different pharmaceutical companies like Consumer Pharmaceuticals, Giant Pharma, Immersive Infotech, Great Systems, Valgenesis, Procorp, and Applied Materials. He was also an adjunct professor at Long Island University College of Pharmacy from 27 till date. He's also a guest lecturer for and Minds at the Carnot, France. Further, he has been a part of different organizations like FD, National Institute of Pharmaceutical Technology and Education at USA. Not only that, sir's previous in assignments include the one at Wockhardt Limited India, where he was President Biotechnology and Chief Scientific Officer. Earlier to that, he was also part of Chief Scientific Officer at Philip Morris International. Was a part of Sandoz, Germany, being the Vice President and Global Head of Pharmaceutical Development. And before this company, Sir was also Deputy Director, Office of Pharmaceutical Sciences, CDR, during the year 2000 to 2005. Yes, these are just few of the achievements of Sir. Over to you, sir. Thanks a lot for your time on Sunday. And yes, we can get started. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dharmesh. So I hope you're able to hear my voice. So give me a signal if you're not able to do that. And emerging trends and surviving and thriving beyond 2020, I think, is what's on my mind. And why is that so? Let me explain. I think at the same time, I want to put this in context that trend watching is a full-time job, and we already have a full-time job. So how do we keep an eye on the trends and yet be successful in what we need to be doing? And so there are a number of resources that do trend watching for us and in different domains. For example, what's happening in the big picture global world, from eco status to eco shame. That's one of the trending topics now. Human brands and avatars are coming about, metamorphic design, smart brands to help those burned by the pressures of modern life, and meaningful connections. So these are the trendy topics in the broader context. But at the same time, I think we as professionals have full-time jobs. And so the question is, what do we do? How do we keep up with the trends? And here are a few answers, which is the best answer. A, life is a wave of creative consciousness rippling through space and time that we have the honor of aesthetically surfing. So are we surfing the opportunities or not? You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. So how do we learn to surf, I think, would be a question. Waves are not measured in feet or inches. They're measured in increments of fear. And I think that brings the topic of experience, of our emotions. What is experience? Experience is not the number of years you spend on a job that you write on a resume. Experience, by definition, the meaning of experience is to feel emotions. And therefore, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysteries. It is the source of all true art and science. That's Albert Einstein. So I think where I want to take us to is thinking about surviving and thriving in 2020 and beyond. What comes next after this, the Great Reset, I think, is to stay ahead of the curve and to, in a sense, feel the shadow of the future and not necessarily be trapped in trendy topics and buzzwords. So that has been sort of my experience, and I will build this discussion on my experience so that it will become useful to you. So surviving and thriving 2020 plus, what does it mean? So the three questions that I had in mind when Dharmesh asked me to put some thoughts together on this topic was, we generally perceive a huge difference between surviving and thriving. So why discuss both together in an integrated manner? That's the way I'm trying to do now. How will this webinar help the audience make sense of emerging trends selected for discussion? But really, I think what's the ultimate objective here is, what can members of the audience do individually and collectively, perhaps under the umbrella of PharmaElite? What actions can they take next to see more clearly opportunities to thrive while securing their professional survival for the next decade? That's really where I'm coming from in thinking about this. And the picture I have used here is a LinkedIn post I wrote at the end of 2019, December 25th, 2019, 2020 plus, end of a journey. And if you're not connected to me on LinkedIn, you haven't followed my journey. That I've started writing as articles on LinkedIn in 2014 onward. So I think if you might be interested in checking that LinkedIn articles that I have on my page. So I think, is there a huge difference between surviving and thriving? The answer really depends on what do you mean and what do you think. I think I have sort of created a collage of recent events. I think, for example, in the center is the social issue here in Maryland and Virginia. Today is when the moratorium for eviction of those who rent and are unable to pay the rent is gone today. So will we see people thrown out on the streets who have not paid up their rent for a number of months? That is a real possibility. So I think yesterday we had protests here in Virginia and Maryland on the Congress ran home to their states and not voting on what needs to be done. So we are in chaos. I think censorship is galore. Two of very high-profile scientists who actually understand vaccines have been censored, and the trust in FDA and CDC I've never seen such low trust. Do I trust my former colleagues? I have my doubts, and I think, and then all around us, we have mudslides, flooding. That's not a river. That's a road in China flooded, and that's not California. That's Turkey fires, and that's Australia and France protest, and here are migrants coming everywhere. So we are at a tipping point. If you think the world has not changed, you are, I don't know which world you are in. I think if you think you're going back to normal, you are sorely mistaken. I think so. Your mindset is very important. My big approach is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. That's my design space. That's what came about from ICHQ8. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That's Viktor Frankl, the survivor of the Holocaust. And I think the key here is, resilience is all about being able to overcome the unexpected. Sustainability is about survival. And the goal of resilience is to thrive. And I think so those two, survival and thriving, when you do that successfully, the emotion is the same. It's exhilarating. It's happiness. And if you are unable to do that, you have fear and anxiety. So from an experiential perspective, they cannot be separated. They're confounded. They're convoluted, and we have to deal with surviving and thriving in an integrated manner. And so where we are today, I think, is we are searching for herd immunity, and in many, many different contexts. So each word in English language has double meanings or multiple meanings, and unless and the meaning we make determines our development stage, our maturity stage. And if you're unable to make the meaning from different perspectives, then you're not developing. So herd immunity, the three monkeys, that the story that we heard in when I was growing up in India, or in the school, is now translated into this picture now. So because we are good laboratory, clinical, and manufacturing practitioners, do we see evil, and do we hear evil, and do we speak no evil? I mean, we have to think about all those things. So if we see evil and hear evil but speak no evil, then how does the system improve? And I think this is fundamental to the struggle that we experience at every stage of our development in different ways. And how do we deal with that anxiety, fear? I think is part of our learning experience. And if we recognize evil, we hear evil, we see evil, but we don't do anything about it, we are evil too. So how does one progress to improve a system? I think is a learning process, is an experiential learning process. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why we are here. What is the purpose of life? Is to learn to be human, and that's our learning experience that we share together. So why surviving and thriving integrated together? We have been in a perpetual emergency for decades. Now we are at a tipping point, and why, where, and how we live and work is being reset rapidly. Now it's being reset by a few of the elites. So if you are going to be reset, do you consent to that reset, or do you want to reset your life and so forth in your terms, on your wishes and with your vision? I think that depends on whether you engage, or you want to have the slave mentality, that and you want to be a slave. That completely depends on how you think about what you want to be as a human. So what is rapidly in pharma sector? Is it 10 years, or is it 6 months? I think is a question that I think I want to sort of think about, because change is coming so rapidly. And how many of people in the audience will have a job in 5 years? Or how many of people in my audience will be a millionaire in 5 years? I think those are the opportunities, and those are the challenges that we face. So how long does it take to change an old and bad habit? How much time do you have to prepare to be in good position to thrive in the new world? Those are the questions. They are deep questions. They are superficial questions, depending on where you are, what stage of development you are. But this is an opportunity to wake up and to take ownership of your professional career, of your destiny, and to do something about it. Being aware of trend helps to be prepared when the opportunity knocks. But trend watching is a full-time job. You already have a full-time job. So how do we think about emerging trends so that we can identify opportunities to thrive? That's the methodology that I want to share with you. I'm not going to give you a list of trends, do this, do that. That's check the box, copy paste. That's not what experiential learning is. You have to learn what is an emerging trend that is relevant to you on your own, what is in your context. I'm going to share with you experientially learned methodology from my experience. So hopefully that becomes useful. So it is useful to learn to be aware and make sense of trends, but not by a trend that somebody else tells you this is a trend that's relevant for you. Now, I think we had the warp speed development of the vaccines in the US. And here is a link for you to review that and so forth. So what usually took years was done in months. And I'm not going to go through the details of that. You have that with you, and Dharmesh, I'll share a PDF version with Dharmesh, so he will have. If you want a copy of this, you will have that. So that's not the purpose of the discussion today. Today is the big picture aspect. So warp speed. How did that happen? Did it happen just in last couple of years, or what's behind it. So let me reflect on warp speed from my own experience, my part of that experience. So when I go back and reflect on this, so here is a meeting in 2005 I had with HARPA. When I was FDA then. The HARPA and FDA collaborating to ensure national security through radical innovation in pharmaceutical development, manufacturing, and regulatory process. And the whole idea there was to accelerate critical therapeutics and integrated development approach so that we can have from identify the pathogen in hours. Within 2 weeks, we have target. Next 2 weeks, we have preclinical evaluation. 8 to 12 weeks, we have large-scale manufacturing, and then I think we have a situational. So what used to take 7 to 8 years, we wanted to do. Do you know how long will it take to make the next vaccine of mRNA? 2 days. That's all it takes today. But manufacturing still is on the critical path. So the world has changed. Where with synthetic biology, where we are going, development is not necessarily on the critical path of the API. In this context, but the formulation and manufacturing becomes on the critical path, and that's something we want to think about. So when you have an opportunity to do experiments at the global stage, you take it, and I took that. So one of the reasons I went to Philip Morris was I got a chance to take the tobacco plant and see how we can convert it to a manufacturing facility for vaccines. So if you look at this a National Geographic article which came out a few days ago, your next vaccine could be grown in a tobacco plant. That relates to, in part, my experience at Philip Morris in a tobacco company. So in 2008, we had a hypothesis saying that Medicago was in a Canadian company which was making an alpha. So we converted that to tobacco. We said, all right, here is a GSK facility in Quebec, and here is a small, tiny facility of Medicago. Can we make vaccines in this small facility and make the GSK facility obsolete? And we proved that, and we actually DARPA funded that for put a factory in US. And compared to cell-based, the DARPA was to produce 10 million flu vaccine doses in 1 month, and the plant won. So here is a system that has evolved. Now the Medicago's COVID-19 vaccine is in the final stages of the phase 3 study. So let's see what comes out of that. But here was an opportunity to do an experiment at the global stage to say, all right, what are the technologies that we need to solve a problem of vaccinating 7 billion people in the world? The conventional manufacturing is too expensive and so forth. Now, how would we reach the entire population is perhaps just grow your vaccines. So here is an idea, and the link I have provided will give you far more information. So the whole idea is what is possible in the near future comes from high risk investment. So here we looked at, I'm just going, here we looked at investment in research, which the commercial investment will not be there because return on investment cannot be calculated. But see, risk, when the consequence is so high, probability of occurrence is not taken into account. We just make sure we prevent that risk. And so here is a mechanism in the US, which is called Defense Advanced Research Product Agency, and they invest in research which is high risk research in terms of return on investment or net present value cannot be calculated. So here is an example of their program, which they announced on April 21st, 2021. What are they interested in terms of biotechnology? There are a number of different programs. Integrate biology, engineering, computer science, mathematics, and physical sciences for improving human performance, material sensor processing, ecosystem, and environmental problem solving, biosecurity and biosafety, biomedical and biodefense. And a few specific examples of where the research funding is going is to advance treatment and resiliency in neurological health, transformative neural processing, fatigue, cognition, and optimized human performance. Developing new technologies for rapid, automated, and resilient manufacturing, delivery, and distribution of critical molecules for application in therapeutics, chemical, and biological defense. Developing new platform technologies for targeted, effective, spatio-temporally controlled drug delivery of large and small molecules and biologics. Spatio-temporally controlled means I want to target this particular neuron in this particular individual to change his behavior. I'm not joking. We are able to do that now. So magnetic proteins. 2016 we had that, and how do I then target a particular neuron? That's the level of precision we are trying to seek now. So that's where the trending is going. So, but what is visible to us often is investment trends that help us uh, say something about what is happening now in the commercial sense. So I want to focus on that at the moment, but uh, a trend for me is something that is going to happen. It's a trend is usually done by survey and so forth. That's what a population thinks. Trend for me is not what a population thinks, because population doesn't have all the information. Trend for me is what is likely to happen with the people. A survey will not be able to pick that up. That's where I come from. But let me take a survey of Life Science Outlook 2021, which was by JP Morgan, which is a conference they do on a regular basis. The bankers are very much interested in this. So what are the trends now? Biopharma continues to dominate. Fantastic increase in investment, but funding for orphan and rare disease is almost gone. Disruption in supply chain led to focus on building in more resiliency and redundancy. So the push to bring manufacturing back to US is so significant. And I have several, I advise several companies on that, but I won't be able to, I won't talk about that. But what I'm telling you is the business model for generic drugs will change dramatically. So if you're working in a generic drug sector, 5 years from now, what will generic drug sector look like? You won't recognize it. That's how dramatic the shift is. The initial aspects, what you see is Civica RX, a not-for-profit organization which makes generic drugs for and supplies it to hospitals without the middleman. My own company I advise, Continuous Pharmaceuticals, which is a spin-off of MIT and Novartis, has a $69 million funding from Department of Defense and so forth to manufacture generic drugs. So good, just as a trend. The sentiment today is we don't want to buy generic drugs from anywhere else, from India, China. We want to make generic drugs here. We want to make APIs here, but we cannot make the APIs and generic drugs the way we used to make before, because they're prone to pollution, they're prone to adulteration, they're prone to data integrity issues. So we cannot repeat that same. So how do we reinvent manufacturing in US? That's what's happening. So that's on the competitive horizon. So if you're working in the Indian generic industry, and if your company is relying on US profits, US revenues, dollars to come in, you better start thinking differently now. So I'm going to give you an example on that. But beyond that, health IT got big hit, high time, boosted by virtual care surge. Diagnostic space continues to take on, but demand for medical device went down. So those are the trends right now. Why did device go down? I think primarily it's a dip which is reflecting the delayed in elective surgeries, delayed in regular the COVID shut down most of the conventional surgical and other aspects. It's just a temporary dip. It will come back, would be one sense. So I'm an advisor for many years to Applied Materials, and Applied Materials is a company which also is very prominent in India. They have a research facility at IIT Bombay, IIT Mumbai Venture Group, way back in the hillside there. But they're coming from semiconductor industry, and now they're applying their know-how and technology to pharmaceutical problem solving, from semiconductor manufacturing to pharmaceutical manufacturing. That's the trend. So if you should look at that, there's the market is booming for them. And so investment, commercial investment gets related to return on investment. That's not my focus. So yes, somebody might be interested in applied materials stock with 5 years. I'm not looking at that. That's the trend that doesn't interest me. For me, the interest is solving a problem. What is the problem I want to solve with my collaboration with applied materials is maturing the technologies so that we have smart factory for pharmaceuticals. So a real-time data-driven plant environment that senses factory activity, predicts performance, and prescribes effective actions. So a completely independent manufacturing unit, it also improves visibility, drives quality, safety, and yield throughout, and reduces cycle time, blah, blah, blah. So what are the stages of maturity that usually go through? We put a foundation in place. You have electronic system, you have procedures in place, you have first level reporting, you have enterprise connected systems, data standardization, global connected system, data standards and contextualization, data enterprise to enterprise visibility, cross-platform analytics, move from reactive to predictive, optimize knowledge management, and really end-to-end automation. Maximum return on investment would come there, where you have artificial intelligence, internet of things implementation, pharma in industry 4.0, automated action, human augmentation, machine to machine communication. And really that would be the ultimate stage of maturity, and where the artificial intelligence is also a knowledge advisor. So you go from analytics and control to predictive maintenance, to operations, productivity, and knowledge advisor. So those are the stages of maturity in a technology sense. There are many different ways to think about technology maturity, but we also have to think about professional maturity. So in that sense, I've been an advisor to Val Genesis for 15 years now. And this company is now matured enough to now perhaps go IPO pretty soon. Maturity of technology and profession. So how does one build a small company from 3 people to now thousands of people and offices in 6 different countries? How does that maturity come about, and how do we bring together? So we had an opportunity last week to Alton Johnson was ex senior VP for Pfizer. So he talked about Pharma 4.0, how to mature your technology and join the fourth industrial revolution. My interest has been moving away for human development, professional development. So validation, life cycle management, and maturity of socio-technical systems is my interest now. So I'm focused on people development, professional development more so, but we live and work in socio-technical system, and our technology matures faster than our society, and we have a big problem right now. The societal collapse is likely to happen if we don't match up our social maturity with that of technological maturity, because technology is the domain of the rich and the elite, and the human nature is good and evil are together in all of us, and profit drives everything. So if the society as we know it, as a democratic society, has to survive, we have to balance and we have to bring the maturity of society and technology in the right balance right now. And that's where my focus is. That's where the biggest challenge is, because the world we will leave behind, or world will move in and leave behind for the next generation. What type of world will that be? I think is a very important question for me at this stage. So let me also talk about another one. My focus has always been on process analytical technology and quality by design. So, for example, liposomes. If I look at the situation now, how dramatic the trend has changed. What is the trend now? So, if you liposomes in the generic sector are characterized as complex generics. And if you look at doxorubicin liposomal preparation, we were never able to manufacture that reliably. I think J&J, who used Benvenue lab to manufacture it, went through hell. Uh, and then Sun Pharma stepped up to replace. And now we have struggled with regular manufacture of liposomal doxorubicin for decades. And therefore, when I was at FDA, we had started thinking about this. And this is now the outgrowth of that is a completely automated PAT-based continuous manufacturing for nano and liposomal and nanoparticles. And here is a commercial unit. So instead of a large factory, I can have liposomal and liposome and lipid nanoparticles manufactured in that small unit. And it has the ability to produce mRNA, lipid nano, is sterile filtered, high throughput, modular closed system. And how did we arrive at that? I think is key. Closed system, no open transfer, all in step one. So it is turbulent technology, a turbulent flow technology that from a mechanistic perspective, we look at the Reynolds number. The flow Reynolds number is predictive of liposomal particles or nanoparticle size. So you build on understanding the mechanistic basis of the sources of variability. So you have to read the PAT guidance very carefully. PAT guidance at FDA, which was published in 2004, defines process understanding. A process is understood when all sources of variability are identified. The process is designed to control that variability so that you don't have variability coming in, variability going out. You want to have a manufacturing process that variability comes in, but the process adjusts and reduces variability so the product quality comes out. So particle size, distribution, the surface charge are critical to their pharmacokinetic distribution. I think one of the things you will see here is you will see as the review process progresses, a lot of questions will come about is how good is the manufacturing process under control for the vaccines we already have. The European reviewers already have complaints. So if you want to see some of the whistleblowing papers, you have to go to British Journal of Medicine and simply look at that, how well controlled the current manufacturing process is. That will be a big question later on. And I think we are at the lowest level of public trust in regulatory and public health institution. We have a very, very serious situation right now. So what will happen in the next few months is going to be dramatically change our lives. So I think so here, for example, so we focused on understanding the processes. So inline tangential flow for PAT, online measurement for lipid concentrations, PAT enabled measurement of drug encapsulation, sterile filtration period. So you already have a ready and fill finish, which is which fits in. So here are technologies that are just emerging, and so how do you nurture them? How do you mature them? Is where my interest is right now. So I think on the other side, I think I just last week accepted this advisory appointment. This is a old friend of mine, Joga Gaburu from University of Maryland, who started this company. I remember Joga. He was a graduate student at University of North Dakota. So he had called me. I was a professor, associate professor in Cincinnati. I was sitting there because we both had the common interest. I was heavily into artificial neural networks in 1989, 1990, and he was just finishing off his master's then to think about how to go to University of Iowa to do his PhD with on PKPD with PKPD modeling with neural networks. This is 1990s, no, 1989, 1990s what I'm talking about. So now the artificial intelligence has matured enough. So now we want to bring that back, because where we see the struggle is we have data, we have information, but much of the industry is unable to convert information to knowledge. Why? Two reasons. One is we have a bad habit of copy paste, cut and paste. Tell me what to do, FDA will do it. So we don't have own critical thinking anymore. And the other is you hire consultants to write your papers. You have medical writers, you have this. So most scientists cannot even write papers in industry at the moment. So what is the difference between information and knowledge? Information experienced, applied practically, becomes knowledge. Information copy paste is not knowledge. So if you're in the information age, you are extinct in the next 10 years. I'm not joking. So reimagine drug development. I think so. We need knowledge management and our data. So this company really brings from regulatory PKPD, clinical trial designs to now connecting it to quality aspects, especially for complex generics. And this would be an exciting opportunity. I've taken this on right now. But at the same time, what my interest is to help people develop. So this is I am also advisor to a company in Pune called Immersive Infotech, where the whole idea is, what does it mean to know? Immersive Infotech's designs customs knowledge management system is workforce development will be a key. Cutting edge technologies like AI and virtual reality to make experiential learning part of your development. I think that's the key. The key is experiential learning. And experiential learning is something we don't do very well. And I want to end my discussion with giving you hints on how you should be able to do that. So in that sense, I think experiential learning is such an important component, and we don't do that well. So since when I look at Dharmesh, he all of a sudden he contacts me in 2019. I don't know him. In fact, so he first organized academia to industry A2I thing in 2018-19. I'm forgetting. So I was so impressed by this young chap who wants to solve problems, do something, action, action, action. I spent my money to come to India to participate in that, and then working with my old classmates like Professor Mala Menon and a number of Parizad, Dr. Parizad, and so forth. We said, look, we need to fill the gap between academia to industry because our academic curriculum is evolving very slowly and the world is changing very rapidly. So, and many of the companies do not have the resources to bridge the gap between academia to industry. And some companies are large and do that very well, but other companies cannot do that. So the hiring of people right now is on the road. Come on. Walk-in interviews to more formal things. So India, to be a pharmacy to the world, will have to invest heavily in people development. Maturity of people will be a key. And therefore, this is our contribution to working with Dharmesh to see how we can help fill this gap in a different ways of thinking about this. There will always be rocks in the road ahead of us. They will be stumbling blocks or stepping stones. Depends how you use them. And I think I want you to think about what can I do and what can you do collectively under PharmaElite. I think because unless you take on the responsibility for your own growth, your own development, your own maturity, nobody's going to take care of them. I think they'll take care of you to the extent that they get some money out of you or some value out of you. Nobody cares for you except yourself. Perhaps your parents, but that's not what we're talking about here. So you have to take responsibility for your own development is the key message there. So my story here that I sort of narrated from my experience was my vision 20 years later has become vision 2020 plus. What was my vision at FDA in 2001? Remember this date, November 28, 2001. Do you know what happened in September 2001? So this all was occurring after 9/11. So the Vision 2020 then was, I can see clearly now, quality and performance by design, continuous real-time monitoring of quality, specifications based on mechanistic understanding of how formulation and process factors impact product performance, high efficiency and capacity utilization, real-time review and inspections from Rockville, White Oak, and so forth. I was FDA then, so I wanted to have real-time review and inspection. I think we have made bits of progress on all of this in the pharma sector, but COVID has precipitated real-time review and inspection requirements anyway now. So I think the disciplines of genetics, biotechnology are progressing rapidly. And I think as we saw, integration of biology, physics, and so forth is coming along very, very quickly. So what is my advice to you? What you should do? Very simple things. So the learning from experience is intuitive. We always do that. We do that in an ad hoc way. So if we do that a bit more carefully, that becomes a big asset. My phone is learning from my experience because it's smart, and you're not smart. You're wasting your time on WhatsApp University and doing all sort of things. On convert that to a useful activity, from smartphones to factories to nanoparticles for delivery. Do you know we have the smart nanoparticles? We can rapid integration of social media and chatbots in e-commerce is growing exponentially. So don't be a slave to your smartphone. Let it work for you. This is the time, because in 5 years you will have a supervisor who will be an artificial intelligence supervisor. Use it to monitor the trends relevant to you. Use your right keywords and tags. Do you think I keep searching web for? No, I have my bots who send me every day. These are the important one. They create a dashboard for me automatically. I don't have an office anymore. I have a AI assistant which I program myself, which gives me a dashboard of what are the key things that I need to look at, and I spend half an hour, 1 hour going through that. I don't spend all day on searching for this. Get to know to build a custom AI chatbot, and you can do that in minutes without expert technical skills. How do you do that? So that might be a project that you do take on yourself, or do it under PharmaElite or something, or as a collective. Learn from experience by making sense of your contemporaneous notes. One of the key learning is I never kept a diary growing up. What I would advise you to keep a diary, make notes, how you feel, how you think, what you do. That relationship is important to understand experiential. We keep we don't record that, we don't observe that. If you observe that, it really helps you to progress. Here's an example of how you can make your own chatbots, but there are many, so you choose what you can do. The top 12 health chatbots, the medical futurist article is a useful starting point if you want to think about that. But that's completely up to you. But the key here is to make sense of Industry 4.0. Industry 1 was mechanization, where water and steam were the power source. 2 was electrical power assembly. And 3 was programmable logic and information technology, which automated the system. 4 is plus smart machines, factories, cyber physical systems, Internet of Things, cognitive computing in cloud. But we are actually very quickly will move to Industry 5.0, which nobody talks about. It's man and machine reconcile and merge. That's the agenda on many of the World Economic Forum and so forth. So do you want to merge with remember Star Wars, the data and Borg? That's the image that comes to my mind. So here is something I learned after 9/11, September 11th. Many people don't know this, but the first FDA workshop on PAT was internal workshop on PAT was organized, and the day was September 11th. And after the initial session, we had a coffee break, and obviously it had to be canceled. But we did not cancel the FDA Science Board meeting, which was 16th of November 2001. And here is so I have been writing about all this in the Indian Pharmaceutical Association Pharma Times. So you will see my articles and my columns in Pharma Times, which talks about all of this. So you have a source to go back on sense making, or making sense. What is the process of making sense? So here I have sort of designed a better design for this. So remember, where is your mind at this moment? Are you in the real world, physical domain? Are you in the information domain, or are you in the thinking domain or cognitive domain? So if you really think about this, where do I start? Let me start with outcomes and observations at the end of the physical domain cycle at the bottom there. When you have an outcome, you observe it and you record it in data, and data collected becomes information. And that information then gives us awareness, and awareness interacts with knowledge, and knowledge interaction with the way we think. Awareness, knowledge, and how we think leads to understanding, and our understanding is different. If I'm a chemist, I'm a pharmacist, I'm an engineer, my understanding of the word control is very different. So we have to share our understanding, and once we share our understanding, there is a difference in our understanding. And how do you reconcile the difference? You have to make sense. What is sense making is something you have to learn quickly. And if you are on LinkedIn with me, I've been posting articles on LinkedIn on sense making, because in an uncertain situation, how we make sense is a key skill that we must. So once we make sense, in the PAT initiative, we had a knowledge pyramid: first principles, mechanistic understanding, correlations, and empirical data. So if you look at the data hierarchy, knowledge hierarchy, the apex is first principles. What is first principles thinking? What is first principle thinking in validation? A validation means the SOP is very well calibrated, it is reproducible and repeatable. And those are the, so if you keep asking questions, I may not be an expert in a particular analytical method, but I'm part of the team. I can simply ask to make sure. I may not understand the technology, but I can make sense of the technology to see whether the decision we are making is the right decision or not, by asking questions from the first principle. The first principle questions in case of measurement would be: is the method calibrated? How is it calibrated? Is the method reproducible? How do we know that? Is the method repeatable when you train somebody and somebody else does that? So ask. Thinking from first principles is key, and first principles could be first principles of physics, like Joule Thomson's effect, or it could be first principles of validation, good practices, and so forth. But sense making is a separate process, and you have to bring that out and pay attention to that, because our experience is generated from within, the emotions, expectations, and motivation. So that's the limbic system. And we are, when we are in fear and anxiety, we don't make good sense. We don't pay attention to the right thing. So we have to do this very well now. So staying ahead by staying in the present, better than placebo in trials and in real world, surviving and thriving 2020 plus. So my request is, I think if you want to get to deeper level of understanding of this big picture talk that I have said, take a look at this article I wrote in 2020, Pharmaceuticals Beyond 2020, Professionals and Artificial Intelligence, in Pharma Times, Volume 52, June 2020. But at the same time, I keep sharing my experience on LinkedIn also. So please feel free to send me an invite to connect if you're not already connected. So this was Vision 2020 Plus. When you go back and look at that, you will see that. So where I'm coming from here is, the key message really is surviving and thriving in 2020 plus, the pharmaco context, what you do in pharmaceutical sector, because by law you're required to be good practitioners by law. So for example, if you're in R&D, the Kaifer-Harris amendment to the FD&C Act in 1962 defines substantial evidence of effectiveness, and it says that substantial evidence of effectiveness is the right integration of all investigations, including clinical trials. So pivotal clinical trial was taken off the book, by experts who have the scientific training and experience to make decisions fairly and responsibly. That's the law. Those are the words from the law. And then you have 21 CFR 211.25, which says that to be a good practitioner, you need to have the right combination of education, training, and experience. So experience is part of the law. How we learn from experience, we have never really defined that carefully. And experiential learning is going to be key. And what I'm suggesting here is, we have to build on the tradition of pharmacon, which is, pharmacon is a composite of three meanings: remedy, poison, and scapegoat. That's the reality. It's human. Good and evil are within us. So we have to learn. We cannot ignore the evil. We have to make good more important than evil. That's how the system improves. And I think that's what I started. So the message has always been in the bottle, whether it's snake oil to snake protein. The issues are the same. Uh, Only if you can make sense of what it says. Where we are today, next year we will be in a very different place. It can be extremely bad, or perhaps a bit more. We will have some more relief, but we are at a tipping point. We are in a serious situations. What may be trendy for some is an agenda for others. What is the difference? The difference is your maturity. Thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you so much. It was totally into different insights coming right from vaccine. There's a part you mentioned. So basically, first of all, it's not only 2019 wherein you supported the change, you came in for that physical event which you had of 2 days. But yes, back again in 2020, we had a session which was on grounds with regards to industry requirements, and today back again in 2021. So first of all, a big thanks for that. And yes, with our batch one of Academia to Industry Connect, where we had certificate courses which was requiring industrial knowledge, we started a part wherein we started bringing a change for that particular domain what we were targeting. Taking that same thing further with regards to the requirements of industry, and on the basis of that, what is it which is already available. So, students, meanwhile, I wish you all can share your doubts in the chat box, your questions. But sir, just one question which probably all of them might be having since they all are in bachelor's or post graduation. Most of them are not aware about the different sources whereby they can get industry news. Something as LinkedIn may help for blogs, but then if a reliable knowledge source for whatever changes are occurring in the pharmaceutical industry in different domains, what would be the source for that? As you mentioned, chatbots being used at your end with hashtags, that would give you a filtered source of what you want to read. But if you are someone who are in a different direction and don't know what is our interest as of now, but
Dharmesh,
want to
wrong question. Completely wrong question. Don't ask me that. You find out for yourself and tell me and say, sir, I have found this. Is this the right one? Then I'll answer. I'm not going to answer. I'm not. I don't spoon feed. Cut and paste, copy paste, memorization just to pass a test is history for me. That's your business, I know, but mature beyond that.
so most of us are LinkedIn users majorly along with some bloggers, along with some apps which are giving pharma knowledge. But when it comes to the right source for the right information or the first source, then what should be the source in that case? Because I'll tell you LinkedIn, then blogs, then there are
See,
applications like this.
what I can tell you is what I like about MIT program where my daughter went for thing is they always go to the original source. So, for example, as an example, right, dissolution testing, correct? What is the source of dissolution testing? Noyes Whitney equation paper published from MIT in 18 something. Okay, I'm not going to read farm research and complete it before I read that paper. I go to the original source of what the hell is dissolution rate and go from there. So you always go to the original source.
Thanks a lot, sir. Next question, meanwhile, if we are someone who are writing our bachelor and applying for an industry job, and one of the major factors which always comes in is the experience. So to stand different from others, what should be some basic things which they should be aware of?
Experience is going to be the key, I think, Dharmesh. So I think how we define experience is going to, I think we have to change that, right? So the experience used to be hands-on in working in, see, what I can tell you is I did my industrial training after second year B Farm at IDPL in Hyderabad, right? As a pharmacy student. I'm telling you that that was life-changing for me. That was so important for how it shaped my life. So experience is going to be key. And with the lockdowns and so forth, we have an opportunity to redefine experience. There's a reason I'm working with virtual reality and for training and purpose and so forth. I think in what you're doing in your training people for the NIPER and other entrance exams, we have to create that into experience. That's experience too, correct? But there's no way to describe that as an experience that is relevant for a job. I think if you take the time to say, all right, I'm working for this entrance exam, I'm training for this entrance exam. What is the methodology for training? So if you focus on the process, right, for training, you can describe the process, and process becomes experience. Yeah. I'm not sorry. My mind has been moving, so I have not paid attention to the questions and the. So my suggestion is, if you could capture those questions and who asked, I'll take my time to actually answer those questions for you on email, if you don't mind, because there's quite a list of the things. I don't want to ignore any point, and so I would like to come back and answer those questions to you on email, if it's okay.
Sure, sir. I'll share across the doubts for you, and maybe then we can revert onto the scheme.
Okay,
Any
so
last message from?
you put
Yeah,
one
sir.
on Avinash, right? Will you say current research that industry working on now, the focus of Corona? I didn't understand. I have not. No, I didn't understand the question. So
Basically, I
what?
think the question is saying that the current pharmaceutical industry is more focused on corona and mucormycosis because of the ongoing trends.
I still don't understand the question.
Just a second. I probably am interpreting it as there are different industries working in different domains. Someone more on anti-cancer, someone more on rare diseases, someone in some other domains. But with the increase in the number of COVID cases and the potential of business what lies with COVID, is that the case that pharmaceutical industries are shifting more towards research on corona and mucormycosis?
Isn't that an obvious? Why should I ask that question? Sorry, Avinash.
Sir,
I'm saying it's an obvious. There's no answer to that question. Just to turn it around, that's the answer to the question. The world is focused on Corona, man.
sir, lastly,
And
when
Corona is a lifelong. It's never going away. Okay.
Lastly, when it comes to identifying different areas, the major problem what most of us as students face is we are always aware about the domains which are in front of us. We don't know what are the various opportunities. Like you mentioned,
So
different
Dharmesh, if you
avenues.
see that voice is breaking, a lot of people are complaining. So perhaps we stop here, because I think if the voice is breaking, it's best to stop right now.
Sure, sir. I'll share across the feedback form with them along with the doubts, and maybe I'll share across the doubts with you for
So
further studies.
please encourage people to pose questions, and I'll take time to reply those questions on email. Come back to you.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks, sir. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.